There, I hope your day is going well. I wanted to come to you with a hopefully quick video. I got a comment on a video I posted recently called Why is the Alt-Right Winning? And a person by the handle of Missouri Patriot commented and said, "You're embarrassing all of us who are against the alt-right. They aren't white supremacists, they are white nationalists. It's embarrassing for me because I'm practically forced to defend people whose ideology I don't even agree with." So I replied, and thank you, Missouri Patriot, for your comment. I replied to the comment and said, Missouri Patriot, where are the differences between white supremacists and white nationalists? People who held these ideologies called themselves white supremacists when they started America. Think Thomas Jefferson. So I dug a little bit deeper, and just to make sure I was right, I did a little bit of research on the publicized definitions of white nationalism and white supremacy, and what I find is that the definition of white supremacy is an overall and white nationalism is a specific. So many of you know that white supremacy is a religion, a far and wide global religion. White nationalism is what you would call a denomination in that religion. So if Christianity is a religion, white nationalism is the Church of God in Christ. Forgive me for using you as an example, but that's really all it is. And you know, when you read the information that's public about white nationalism, here I'll read you what I have. It says, white nationalism is a type of nationalism or pan-nationalism, which holds the belief that white people are a race, which is kind of difficult for me to comprehend, since the white people thing keeps changing over and over and over again. There was a time when Jews weren't considered white people, Italians weren't considered white people, some Hispanics weren't considered white people, Irish people weren't considered white people, and now they are. There was a time when Trinidadians were considered white people, and now they're not. So from what I understand, a race can't change. That's why Hitler in 1942 made Judaism a race instead of a religion, because religion can change. You can change from being a Jew to a Muslim, to a Christian, to a Buddhist, to a Hindu. You can't change from being a race. So if white people are a race, why does it keep changing? Why does it keep changing who's white and who's not? And what is the genetic marker for that race? I'd like to know. The definition goes on to say, and seeks to develop and maintain a white national identity. What is that national identity? What does it look like, and what does it feel like to others? So its proponents identify with and are attached to the concept of a white nation, which I kind of take issue with, because what is a white nation? I mean, if you look at places like America and many parts of Europe, they were never white before white people stepped foot there, and they were places where white people, European people, stole, raped, pillaged, deceived, did nothing but evil to have possession of what is now considered a white nation. So you got to have a lot of arrogance and what Jewish people would call chutzpah, what I just call balls, nuts, gonads, huevos. You got to have a lot of those to be able to conceptualize a white nation when you have never gotten anything, honestly. So that white nation is built on a lack of integrity, and that's what you're proud of? That's what you want to propagate? The definition goes on to say, white nationalists say they seek to ensure the survival of a white race. And that seems to be everybody else's responsibility that they survive. It says, and the cultures of historically white states. But how far back into history are we speaking? What white states? What states were white? Mississippi wasn't white. Before Mississippi was Mississippi, there were Native Americans and Africans there. Wasn't white. I mean, Delaware wasn't white before white people came from Europe and raped and stole and pillaged and deceived and did evil and killed. There wasn't white historically. How far back into history are we going? And that's why I always tell my African brothers and sisters who say that we've come a long way and we've progressed. Have we really? If your self-esteem only reaches back to slavery, then maybe we've progressed, maybe. But what were we before we were slaves? Who were we? Where were we before we were slaves? And if that's the marker, have we progressed then? So the definition goes on to say, they hold that white people should maintain their majority in majority white countries. Now, how is that majority contained? How does that happen? How is it achieved when you have abortions, you have police brutality, you have genocide, a public school to prison pipeline, you've got AIDS and cancer and diseases that destroy groups of people. You've got chemicals that are placed in the food and chemicals that are placed in the air and all kinds of things that kill people that wouldn't die on their own. So how do they become and how do they stay majority white states? The definition goes on to say they hold that white people should maintain their majority in majority white countries, maintain their political and economic dominance. Maintain, which means they already have it. And how did they get it? The only way, my mother told me when she took issue with Kirk Franklin's style of ministry, she said, the way you get them is the way you got to keep them. The way that his style of drawing people was the way he would have to keep them, which means he would have to do more and more and get more and more extreme, which is absolutely true when it comes to white nationalism. The way you get your economic and political dominance is the way you got to keep it. So I'll let you look back into your own history with honest eyes on how you obtained that dominance, because it wasn't through integrity. It wasn't through partnership. It wasn't through anything that respected anyone else or made anyone else love you, for that matter. So the definition goes on to say their cultures should be foremost. But what is white culture? Somebody tell me. What the fuck is white culture? What part of white culture isn't black culture, Hispanic culture, Asian culture, Eastern Indian culture, Native American culture? What part of white culture is, I mean, you talk about food, music, dance, art, technology, athletics, education. What do they have on their own? What have they had on their own? What have they gotten on their own? So what is white culture? And how is it foremost without highlighting and appreciating and glorifying other cultures? True tea. Many white nationalists believe that miscegenation, I have trouble with that word, miscegenation, which is the mixing of races, multiculturalism and immigration of non-whites, and low birth rates among whites are threatening the white race. And some argue that it amounts to white genocide. Let me unpack that sentence. I'm going to read it again, then I'll unpack it. Many white nationalists believe that miscegenation, which is the mixing of races, which didn't seem to be a problem when they were taking black girls, not women, but girls, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old girls, out of their mother's slave quarters and laying in bed and spending the night with them. when they were breeding different grades from black, from brown to white, to divide us, genetically modifying us. When she was taking him into her bed because her husband was sleeping with ours. Nobody minded the mixing of the races when they were in control of it. Multiculturalism, again. But what culture does, what is white culture? What is white culture? What is white culture? What is it? Classical music is African music. What is white culture? Immigration of non-whites. So you're talking about from just a high level, you're talking about Hispanics coming from Mexico back to America where they were in the first place. Nobody talks about immigration, says immigration of non-whites. So we're not talking about the Eastern Europeans that come here illegally, come to America illegally. You're not talking about Canadians or anyone else. So non-whites, so that would mean that the white Cubans and the white Puerto Ricans are okay, but the black ones aren't. Because I will be happy to tell you, Hispanic is not a race. For those of you who feel like it is, it's not. It's not. It's a culture. It's a language. It's a food. It's a dance, but it's not a race. Unfortunately, in this game, you're either black or you're white, or you're Asian, or Eastern European, or Eastern Indian. But the immigration of non-whites and the low birth rates among whites. Since when are low birth rates among whites the fault of problem or anyone else? You have a recessive gene. It's not dominant, it's recessive, which automatically makes it weak in the face of others. You weren't here in the beginning. You won't be here in the end. Survival of the fittest only works if you allow the game to play itself out and you don't do malicious, manipulative things to sway the game. So then let's talk about white supremacy, because remember, I think white nationalism is a democracy, is a denomination of white supremacy. White supremacy is the overall religion. And when I look at the definition of white supremacy from the same source, it says white supremacy or white supremacism is a racist ideology based upon the belief that white people are superior in many ways to people of other races, and therefore white people should be dominant over other races. Now let me jump back to white nationalism, because I'm reminded of where it says they hold that white people should maintain their majority over majority white countries, maintain their political and economic dominance, and that their culture should be foremost. The belief that white people are superior in many ways to people of other races, and that therefore white people should be dominant over other races. They seek to ensure the survival of the white race and the cultures of historically white states. I'm going back and forth between white nationalism and white supremacy, and they sound alike to me. I can't really note the differences except one goes into greater detail. White supremacy, the definition goes on to say, white supremacy has its roots in scientific racism, which we know is pseudoscience. Pseudoscience. And often relies on pseudoscientific arguments. Pseudoscience, pseudo, fake, faux, like that Gucci bag you see so many carry. They won't work for what it takes to get a brand name is all it is, but it means something. So they go and they pick up what they can have and allow that to suffice for what they can't have. Pseudo, faux. Pseudoscientific. Ni hao. It says, like most similar movements, such as neo-Nazism, white supremacists typically oppose people of color. Let me go back to white nationalism. Many white nationalists believe that miscegenation, multiculturalism, immigration of non-whites are threatening to the white race, and some argue that it amounts to white genocide. Well, white supremacy says white supremacists typically oppose people of color, which is anybody who's not white, as well as people of most non-Christian religions, because Christianity is the religion of white supremacy. The term is also typically used to describe a political ideology that perpetuates and maintains the social, political, historical, or institutional domination by white people. That's white supremacy. Now here's white nationalism. White nationalists say they seek to ensure the survival of the white race in the cultures of historically white states. They hold that white people should maintain their majority in majority white countries, maintain their political and economic dominance, and that their culture should be foremost. That's white nationalism. Now, I'm hearing white nationalism is not white supremacy, but I can't tell the difference. I'm not that educated, I'm not that smart, but I could read, and it doesn't take any real critical thinking. I mean, they're all both here in white and black. Every pun intended. Jumping down into this definition, it says different forms of white supremacism put forth different conceptions of who is considered white. Because see, that thing changes so often based on their numbers because they need help. And different white supremacists identify various racial and cultural groups as their primary enemy. In academic usage, particularly in using drawing on critical race theory, the term white supremacy can also refer to a political or socioeconomic system where white people enjoy a structural advantage or privilege. See, I tend to believe that white privilege is white supremacy, and I don't think it's a joking matter when we say, oh, white privilege, white privilege. We've allowed white people to joke and say they got white privilege. White privilege is white supremacy, boo. You can't have white privilege without African oppression. I think that's what I heard Dr. Umar Johnson say. You can't have white supremacy without African oppression. So if you enjoy if you enjoy white privilege, you enjoy African oppression. And if you allow white privilege, then you allow African oppression. It says, in academic usage, particularly in usage drawing on critical race theory, and I really, really encourage you to dig deep and look into critical race theory. The term white supremacy can also refer to a political or socioeconomic system where white people enjoy a structural advantage or privilege over other ethnic groups, both at a collective and individual level. White nationalism. Is it white supremacy? The definition sounds so much alike to me. Yeah. White nationalism is white supremacy. White nationalism, the alt-right, those are all terms for white supremacy. I can't see anything different. If you have different information to share, I'm happy to see it. I'm happy to read it. But I can't help what I see. I can't help when I see men with tiki torches that aren't being used to ward off mosquitoes. And I've seen men with torches that weren't being used to ward off mosquitoes. White nationalism is a new form of, it's a trendy white supremacy. And going back to the video I posted in which the gentleman or ma'am or whatever you are commented and said, You're embarrassing all of us who are against the alt-right. They aren't white supremacists, they are white nationalists. It's embarrassing for me because I'm practically forced to defend people whose ideology I don't even agree with. You're embarrassing, you are defending them, Missouri Patriot, ignorantly, as many have. You are defending them ignorantly, and I don't hold that against you. But the light has come, the illumination of information has come to you, and now you know better. So don't waste your time or your energy defending people who are what you think they're not. That's all I got for y'all in this moment. Thanks for sharing this time, this moment with me. Like, comment, subscribe, leave your comments below. I really, really think we should have this conversation. I'll talk to you soon.